Love seeing everyone sharing. Do you go to 11:05, Leslie? Does that feel good? Do you want to get started?
Yeah, it's like fluid, just like between 11:03 and 11:05, whenever it feels good. And just letting people enter, just get comfortable, have some water with you, some, fire if that would feel good, some earth if that would feel good. I shared
A
with Carissa
blankie.
once a blankie. I said, the other day, it was like last month, not the other day, but I had like my little altar, like my traveling altar during a ceremony, and I was like, no, I can't find like an air element. And I was like, I can't find an air element to add. And then I was telling Chris, I was like, my AirPods were right there and they're covered, they're blue. I was like, what better? I was like, my AirPods are air, they're AirPods. Yeah, but we
Everyone
can go ahead.
snuggled, tuning in from snow-covered places. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited you're here for the last installment of the Brown Fatherhood series. This time around, this is the second annual Brown Fatherhood series. My name is Carissa Raya. I am the Director of Community Partnerships for Latinx Parenting. I am a doula, photographer. I am a mother to Olive. I have been with Latinx Parenting for nearly 1 year. I was just sharing with Leslie and Dr. Manuel that this series almost like welcomes my anniversary next month. So I'm really excited to celebrate that full circle, having been with the team. But outside of this, I'm also comadres with Leslie. So I love getting to work with my comadre and with my community. I am located on unceded lands of Ahashiman, Tongva, and Kiss nations, known as Orange County in Southern California. And I welcome you all to share where you're tuning in from. And if you know Acknowledging the Native Lands, I did drop the link there if you've never looked that up, where you currently reside in the chat. Just engaging in there, welcome you to share anything that's coming up as you listen to our conversation. So again, welcome to the last session of our Brown Fatherhood series for 2022. I did see some questions in the chat asking if the previous Platicas are on YouTube. They are. If you have registered, you will receive links with the links. You will receive an email with the links to those previous sessions, and then they will be open to everybody following this last session. So this series is a series of Platicas about identity, culture, decolonizing fatherhood, and ending toxic cycles of machismo in the familia. I loved when the series popped up last year. Again, I mentioned I was really good friends with Leslie, and when it came up in my email, I was surprised and forwarded it to my husband because it was like my invitation to him to get really familiar and meet other fathers like him doing this work. Because most of the information comes from me. I'm like, I learned this thing from Leslie, or I read this book, or I read this suggestion, and we're practicing together. But getting to hear from other fathers was really awesome. And I just remember very clearly last year seeing him with like headphones on, just on a Saturday morning as we were eating breakfast or getting ready for the day. He had headphones on, like listening to the conversation. And then he'd kind of like look up and share something, and then like we would continue. But I just really remember that memory, and I love that this series exists and that I get to be part of it and get to be part of this team. So that's just my share. Thank you all for being here. And a little bit of housekeeping before we get this juicy conversation started. There is Spanish interpretation available. Click on the globe for interpretation at the bottom of the screen, and then select Spanish. We have a wonderful mother-daughter team that does our interpretation. So thank you to them. At the end, we will have time for Q&A. So at the end of the talk, but feel free as you're inspired, or maybe a question might pop in at the bottom of the panel on your Zoom screen. There is a Q&A section. So click that Q&A and then you can ask a question there. And we might get to your answer throughout the conversation, or you might wait until the end, and we may not get to all of them because we are in a limited time frame. So we will try our best to get to as many as we can in the time that we have. If we do experience any technical difficulties, they've happened in the past, just hop back on, click the link again and come back. If for some reason it were to end, we make every attempt to like continue to open the webinar in the time that we have. So try to log back on, attempt to log back on. And then as we stated before, the recordings of the conversations will be made available both in Spanish and English, along with the transcript. We want to make this as accessible as possible and forevermore, so that this will be made available after this conversation, typically in the coming hours, if not at least by tomorrow. And then you will receive access to the previous conversations if maybe this is your first one. Thank you again for being here. So now let me introduce my comadre, la jefa, the founder of Latinx Parenting, Leslie Priscilla. I just imagine everyone in the chat. She is a first-generation non-Black Chicana mother to 3 bicultural children and the founder of Latinx Parenting. She resides on unceded Tongva and Hashiman land and is of Raramuri lineage. She has over 14 years experience working with Latinx parents, children, and families who are practicing new ways of connecting and increasing their capacity for thriving while sustaining their cultural values. And with our Plática today is with Dr. Manuel Zaram. I keep wanting to put another M in your name for some reason, Zamarripa, but it's Zamarripa. So my brain for some reason keeps doing that. So Dr. Manuel is a director and co-founder of the Institute of Chicanx Psychology based in Austin, Texas, where he conducts community workshops, professional development training for educators, mental health professionals, and teaching online courses in Chicanx psychology. Dr. Zamarripa has presented at a national and state level on issues of Chicanx Latinx well-being, cultural responsiveness, social justice, decolonization in psychology, psychosocial factors of academic achievement and leadership. His publications, peer-reviewed journal articles, and book chapters focus on counseling, assessment, and teaching of Chicanx and Latinx populations. His 25 years of clinical experience includes working with individual adults, adolescents, couples, and families in community and education settings, rural and urban, from varied economic and cultural backgrounds. He is a licensed professional counselor and approved supervisor and received his PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in counseling psychology, his MS from Our Lady of the Lake in counseling psychology, and his BA from the University of Notre Dame in psychology. We are so excited for this conversation. Thank you for being our final installment to this wonderful series. Dr. Manuel, I know that Leslie credits you as one of her great teachers and references you in many of her courses. So if you've taken any of our offerings, then you have definitely been introduced to him. So everyone enjoy the conversation. Again, we are going to be chatting in the chat, and be sure to ask your questions in the Q&A.
Thank you, Carissa. Thank you so much appreciation. Oh my gosh. Manuel, you are my hero. I mean, I say, everybody who's been a part of this series has been a hero, but I feel like the first time that I connected with you, I was really seeking, I was just like, listen, like something is, I was putting together a presentation and I was like, I know that there's more information that I don't have. And you were so forthcoming and so giving of your time. And so, in addition to that amazing list that Carissa just read off of all of your great accomplishments, I also just want to say that, I've seen your heart, right? Like I've seen your heart show up in the spaces that I've been a part of, that you have led, together with your amazing wife, Jessica. And I just wanted to, really give that credit also to your heart and to your spirit, and the way that you show up, right? Because somebody could have those same credentials and show up in a very different way than you show up. And so I want to first just share appreciations for you, for being my maestro, one of my mentors. Like I just, I give you credit in everything I do. And yeah, but let's get into it. Let's get into talking about who you are from your vantage point. Who is Dr. Manuel Zamarripa, or just Manuel? What were you called as a child? That's something that I ask sometimes in workshops. What was the name that was given to you as a little niño? What can you tell us about yourself, right? Especially as it relates to you as a son and you as a father.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, for all your kind words. I'm grateful. Thank you. Of course, I want to try to start out in a good way, as you know, and with some acknowledgments, just briefly. I want to acknowledge all the panelists that came before me, the amazing fathers and all the work that they're doing, and it's wonderful that their work is out there. I want to acknowledge all the fathers out there that are here and that have passed on, that are our ancestors. My father, who, as we'll talk about, he passed on when I was 12, so I'm happy he's here with me as well. And of course, with permission of the sacred directions, the elementals, with the permission of the sacred energies that are here, I give gratitude to acknowledging also my indigenous spiritual community here, where I am, Kalpuliteo Kaliteo Yolot, with our abuela Rosa Tupini Yatononquatli, who leads us. Piali, Ometeo, saludos. It's good to be here. Thank you. So, I think, one of the things that I always, think about when I talk about, who I am as a father, excuse me, is my father. Um, sorry. So he's going to be a big part of the conversation. I think. I think he always is. Um, and I think without that, without that model, it would have been very different for me. I think everything just kind of what he taught me about who he was, and the fact that he died when I was 12 as well. It was a big influence for me and how I eventually came to see myself as a father. I think that him dying when I was 12, and so not having a father during the teenage years, I think that early on that led to a lot of self-doubt for me, like whether I would even be a good father or not, whether I would want to even take that huge responsibility on of fatherhood. Um, and so that was a whole process for me, just as I began to grow and develop, as an adult. But you asked something specific, Leslie, and I'm sorry, I think I went off. What was that first piece that you opened with? Because I wanted to respond to that. I remember thinking that, and
I was asking what was the name that you were given as a child? I
oh,
think that was
yeah.
what was.
Well, my father gave me two nicknames that stand out. One was just a very common flaco, which means like skinny. I was always like a shorter, skinnier kid, so it was always flaco, flaquito, and chato, which also,
Mm.
and so those were the names that that I went by a lot as a kid from my father. He gave me those names. And it was always an affectionate thing. I loved that. Of course, when I was in trouble, it was always Manuelito. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, so I really loved that. Having
Yeah,
that, reflect on that, and I love that. So I have good
yeah.
memories of that.
Yeah, I ask that question usually when we talk about like the reparenting piece specifically, right? Like when we think about the needs that were met or not met when we were children, and how to frame them. And a good way to start, I feel sometimes, is by really thinking about that name, that like I was given the name Chapa. I'm a chaparra. I'm not a chaparra. I'm like, I was, all my classmates growing up, we were all, brown, and I was like one of the tallest ones. So I'm no longer like chaparra. But he still to this day will call me Chapa, and I love that, right? Like I love feeling like Chapa because I remember that feeling when that apodo was given to
Hmm.
me. And so in this work that you do as well, like we we center our cultura, we center our history, we center our people, but we also nurture and we center that child, right? That child that's growing. And that's still very much, I feel, exists within us. And so that's why, one of the first questions was like, what were you like as a son? What was that relationship like with your father? Because that, of course, it informs the way that we see ourselves as parents, as fathers, as mothers. So tell us more about your childhood. What was it like? And yeah.
Yeah, there was always some repair work to be done with my relationship with my father. But interestingly, as a kid, enough, I was also very close to my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my mom's mom, and she was very close to her. Still, she died a while back, passed on, and have a lot of love for her. It's interesting how we can have these, we can carry two different energies about people because she treated me really well. She loved me. We were very close to her. And she did not have a good relationship with my dad. She was very antagonistic toward him. And she came with her own traumas, of course. And so, um, the oversimplification of that was that, when my mom and my dad were together, she was no longer, able to have the type of control that she wanted. And, that's an over generalization, but so she had a lot of always something negative to say about my father, and that affected me when I was younger because it distanced me from him because I was closer to her, and as a kid you're very influenced, and so I had both you know good memories of him, like, and his treatment toward me, but I also had all these thoughts and ideas that my grandmother was feeding me, all these negative ideas about what a terrible person he was. It was very straightforward. It's not sugar coated. And so, of course, I was like, it made me keep some distance from him, growing up. Um, and and then it wasn't until I think my mother, you know, um, finally had a talk with me, and my sister, about that whole process, because she had had similar experience with her mom, and uh, and kind of helps, kind of break a little bit of that influence. And so I had a you know kind of an ambiguous relationship with my dad growing up, for that reason. And I think I would have looked back on that probably with a lot more, regret if that hadn't happened a couple of years before he died. And I think I remember very clearly, like I was about 10, and I was like, I want to be closer to my dad. I want to have a better relationship with him. And so I would consciously, whereas before, I wasn't like a homebody. I didn't like to go a lot of places, and he would always invite me to, just go run errands, whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to go with him every time he asks me, or I'm going to ask to go with him. And so, like the last couple of years before he died, I really, spent a lot more time with him. I would go with him. I would make it a point to just kind of be around him more. And I'm so glad that I did that. I'm so glad that I had that opportunity. I'm so glad that something, guided me to, really, make those connections. And it makes me think of the wisdom that kids have, right? How much more aware they are than we give them credit for so often in this society. Because I think about it now, and I think I was thinking that as a 10-year-old. I mean, I was like, that seems already like above what a 10-year-old, would think through, but not really, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
so aware. They have such wisdom.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us, like there's this idea that children are like too innocent, right? Like you don't want to share these things with them because they're like they don't understand, they don't. And like me being, married into a white family, right? There's this like awareness I have that like I did not actually grow up sheltered. Like we grew up with a lot of awareness of la migra, like these are like el bote, like these are all words that I heard all the time in my house, right? And so I think that for us, like because of the people that we come from, there is this increased awareness because we are able to see more than just like the layers in front of us. And it's really interesting that you're mentioning this you as a 10-year-old, because I also remember being around that age, and during that time there was a lot of chaos and a lot of like havoc in my familia, and me knowing that I had to step into, like I had to evolve in that moment, right? Like I had to really I just shared like a piece about my being an older sister, and I'm like, okay, I have to like step in and I have to be that attachment figure. And before we had that language, like before we had the language of attachment or anything, it's like, I just want her to feel safe. I want her to feel like, something like she was connected to something, because if I hadn't been there, then I don't know what would have happened. But yeah, children are so aware. What was the transition like? And you can share as much as you feel safe and comfortable sharing, but what was the transition like from having your father, especially in those last couple of years, and then into probably what you experience as a lot of grief in not having your father?
Yeah, it was a huge shift. I mean, it was a huge change. It was obviously, well, I say obviously, but for me, it was a big deal. It was hard. I remember, um, I'm thinking about myself. So I was 12, and so I'm thinking about myself kind of like almost out of high school, and I was driving somewhere, and I realized then, and maybe I was a junior or something. I realized then I was like, wow, for some reason, there was probably a lot going on, but I realized at that time, I was like, well, I've really been grieving my dad's loss all these years, and I hadn't realized how present it had been, because it had been kind of this low level this low level sadness, that kind of had permeated. And so I went on my daily life like we all do, life's in front of us and we step into it every day, and we have good things and good memories and good connections. Um, but I remember thinking that was really my grief. It took years to kind of realize that, because in the moment, I didn't I understood, of course, but I didn't realize, that it was going to have such an impact. I know that, and the thing too is that it was sudden. It was sudden in every, like, you know, kind of in every sense. So my dad also was he only went to eighth grade, right? So he didn't have a high school education. So he did this and that, and he was really an artist. He was very creative, and one of the things he did was he played the guitarrón. For those of you who don't know, like in mariachi or trio, it's the big guitar, it's the bass, and he had a trio amistad with him and his friends, and they would do gigs, and they have a picture of him, a professional picture they took, a trio
Wow.
amistad. And so that was a lot of my memories of my dad is him as a musician, him, playing the guitarón, and so maybe we'll talk more about that. But I remember the night that he left for a gig, which was the last night he was on this earth, and so he went, and he had a gig that he played at. Then afterwards, there was this place that a lot of the musicians would hang out afterwards, and they would just share the stage. They would do a thing, and he was playing, and his friend, who was a good friend, who was a paramedic, also was in the trio, his trio. And they just said, like, he just started stumbling, he fell, and he never regained consciousness. He had nothing, no health conditions that we knew of at the time. The death certificate said undetermined. So he was 50. So in 1 year, I will be the same age my dad was. And so that's also been a very significant thing that I've been thinking about, so he was, relatively young, and it was a complete shock. It was, and so I think that was part of, my grief, that was a little more just kind of subtle, definitely, or right afterwards, I felt it. I remember being cold, and I remember, of course, crying and feeling that. But I also remember that I didn't really cry about his death after that initial, those initial few days.
Mm,
And my mom had to keep going forward. There was two of us and her. And of course, he didn't have a will. He didn't really have anything that he left. So, so I think it was this that having to go through life and um, and also later realizing it wasn't explicit, and told to me, and I didn't explicitly think of this, but it was kind of trying to step in and trying to be a support for my mom, and trying to, just be aware, try to be a little bit more responsible for things. So that whole thing of like, which even as a kid, I just knew was wrong. I didn't like, was the whole thing like, you're the man of the house now. It's like to a
yeah,
12-year-old, like my uncle
yeah,
told me that once, and I was respectful, but that just like, I was like, I'm not the man. Anything. I'm 12, but like,
yeah,
but so not in that way, like that assumed, like, but in a real kind of more subtle way. Yeah, I definitely felt like I had some, to at least especially give that emotional support and trying to
yeah,
just be more present. And so that kind of was kind of grief just kind of lingered for about 6 years or so. I think when I finally realized, like, man, I haven't really gotten out of this funk for all these
yeah,
times, like this whole time. And so, um, and and I remember for a long time too, up until my like mid 20s or whatever, which is not that long after the death, but your teenage years seem like a whole lifetime itself.
yeah,
Life gets Years get shorter as you get older, as a development. But I remember, um, I clearly felt that my life was before my dad's death, after my dad's death. That like
mhm,
I even wrote like I think it was an autobiography how to write, and that's how I framed it. It was my life before his death and after his death. It was like two different life experiences, in so many
yeah.
different ways. So it really marked that growing up process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So vulnerably, I think, it makes me think about my mom lost her father when she was 14.
Mhm.
And by 15, she had come over from Chihuahua and started working right away. But she was a sixth child out of 12. So under her were six children younger than 14. And I
Mhm.
think about, how my tios, right? Like some of the grief, like for whatever reason, you know, you were led into your work, you were led into your family now, you were led into, everything that has happened since then. And I've seen that grief not be processed very well
Mhm.
in other men in my family, and also
Yeah.
also just among our people, right? Because
Yeah.
you as a child knew, like, I'm a kid, I'm not the man in the house, right? And there's people and children that have really internalized that, right? Like, well,
Yeah.
I have to be the man, or whatever that means, right? And then you have to
Mhm.
form a concept about what that means to you. Have you seen that, in your work? Have you seen that with people who have not processed the loss, whether it's lost because the father or the father figures have passed, or because they were not present at all, or because, they ended up leaving at some point? What have you seen? And I want to bring it back to the personal, but I'm very curious, right, just about this cultural piece, because I feel like there's a lot of messaging around not feeling,
Mhm.
and so grateful that, people like you and Maestro Jerry and, all these men are
Yeah.
like, actually, like, we do cry, right? Si lloramos, and it's healthy and it's good. And at the same time, I'm very curious about what you have seen, and what you have seen kind of the evolution of when it comes to that.
No, thank you for asking, because I think, I definitely um, think of that as the exception, my idea, like that I just didn't connect, that my rejection of being the man of the house at that age. I also aware that that's not typical in a lot of ways. and that is, that is something that we still, we still impose, I think, on kids. And when you have that loss, and you are male or male identified kid, um, all you can do is grasp at what you've seen of masculinity from from your own development at that time, and so there are gaps. What you see is action, you see movement, you see what people do. You haven't had a chance to really too much sit with people and know what's in their heart, know what their intentions are, assuming that a lot of maybe even what some kids are seeing, maybe there's more to those fathers and those males that they're seeing, even in
Mhm.
those situations where there's some positivity behind that. They only see the actions, and the gaps get filled in with who they're around, and the majority of the concepts that they come across about us, about not just males but brown males.
Mhm.
And I think that's what happens is they put together an image they think they're supposed to follow. They try to become reflections of how they think they're supposed to look like. um, and and I think that causes a lot of damage. It allows us not to develop emotionally. It fortifies, if nobody corrects that, it fortifies and reinforces those ideas of what it is to be a man and maleness. Um, and we don't have a lot of other men willingly, openly talking about that bigger holistic picture. And
Yeah.
so that kid's just going to develop with those images in that way. And I think it's one of the other things that keeps us from utilizing um, our emotional abilities the way we should, to be more whole. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think about one of my tios. He's not very well right now, and I called him yesterday. He had called me. He lives in Juarez right now, and I said, I just called. I said, solo le llamé para avisarle que es mi favorito y para grabarlo diciendo que yo soy su favorita para cuando sí se muera, eso voy a esa grabación la voy a poner. But he and I, like, we joke around like that a lot, and but I remember one time we were driving. And I reference this story a lot because it really stood out to me in terms of the way that I impose, right? Like I impose my shoulds upon somebody like my tío who lost his father when he's like 4 years younger. So he must have been 10, when his father died. And one day we were driving and he was on the phone with his son. His son was probably 4 or 5 at the time.
wow.
And he was living in Mexico, and he the little boy was crying. My primo was crying, and he's like, no sea vieja, no sea vieja, like he's telling him like, don't be a girl, like, no. And he's like, no sea joto, no sea joto, like,
Uh,
like, don't cry, but in these very, very directed ways. And I'm like, parent educator over here, reading the parenting books. And I'm just like, tío, no le diga eso. And he looked at me very sternly and he was like, yo no le digo cómo criar a sus hijos, usted no me diga cómo criar a los míos. Like, I don't tell you how to raise your kids, you don't. And I was just like, okay, right? Like, okay, I'm not gonna, because I was trying to do it with respect, but also wanting to
right.
advocate, right? Wanting to advocate for that little boy who was crying on the other end of the line.
Mhm.
But it's a reflection, right? It's a reflection
Right.
about how he feels about himself should he experience those emotions as well. It's
Right.
very uncomfortable.
Right. I think what happened, I think, one of the things that I'm sure people have talked about this before, I'm not the only one, and maybe, we say this a lot, but it's like we have two layers you know, of oppression to navigate when we see emotional expression for males and boys,
Mm.
um, that we need to heal. And one is that surface, that first layer I think that you saw there, which is that anything related to vulnerability and emotionality, is seen as feminine, right?
Mm,
And so, which is not male, right? But of course, along with that, I think we talk about this separately, but I always see these like right on top of each other because obviously, along with that is the idea very clear that that sense of femininity is also a negative thing, that being feminine and vulnerable is weak and not a thing to be. And then much less talk about, sexual or intimate orientation, and for a man to be gay, also seen primarily as feminine, which obviously the negative connotations again just shows you the implications of the negative connotations of um, femininity, and how as much as on another side of our brain and our ways of being, our community can elevate femininity, that when it comes to femininity being in the wrong place, it is so reviled. It's I don't think it's something that we talk about enough in that way.
mm.
Um, because when we do that, then we're not just talking about maleness, we're talking about maleness and femaleness at the same time, the ways in which those are so closely aligned with those type of responses. I don't know if that
Yeah,
made sense, so let me know.
yeah, yeah, it did. And I mean, I think it goes back and forth, right? Because I feel like your abuela, for example, and the relationship that she had with your father, like it makes me think about that and how a lot of that is also reinforced in that way, right? Like, oh, your dad
Yeah,
is this and this. And my mom was also, when my parents split up when I was 9, like it was a lot of like tu papá es esto y esto y esto. And that was like that wasn't necessarily the best way to go about that, right? And
yeah,
so yeah, I've been like really also exploring like my relationship to masculinity um and how it is, it's both, and it's
yeah,
like finding the balance in between and feeling into like where you are on that, as you say, like that continuum, right? Like people
yeah,
see it as binary, and you're always talking about continuums and how even that, like even gender exists on this continuum.
yeah, absolutely. I think, of course, you know this, and in our discussions, but one of you know the energy of the Ometeo, right? The energy of two, um, the idea that duality exists in the universe as part of one of our ancestral concepts. Um, and there's the light and the dark and the male and the female, and that sense of duality. But as you say, I like to say duality, that those two energies doesn't necessarily mean it's a binary, right?
Mhm.
It's just the fact that to what degree is that balanced right for us, or
Yeah,
each of us
yeah.
on that continuum, we each have a balance.
Hmm.
And so that what you were saying reminded me kind of that
Yeah,
idea that
it's interesting
duality
because
doesn't mean binary or
yes,
necessarily.
yes, exactly. And I feel like sometimes when people hear us say certain things, they're like, but you just said something different, right? Like, but you just said something that seems opposite, but it's not actually opposite, it's both. And so one of the things that came up recently was I was talking about how, our stories, something that was very present in me is that around the time of my second pregnancy in 2017, I had a lot of some subconscious feelings come up about what was going to happen to my family, because when my mom was pregnant, with my sister. She was the second born daughter as well, and right after that was when everything like blew up, right? And so
Mm,
subconsciously, I was like really struggling in this pregnancy until in therapy, right? In therapy, my therapist was like, "Your story is not her story," and at the same
right.
time, our story is completely interconnected, right?
Hmm.
Like it's woven together, but those strands are still separate. They're woven, but the strands are still separate, right? And so for us, it's
Yes,
about kind of like untangling that, and seeing, which ones are my strands, which ones are your strands, and then knowing what feels good, like how to kind of like weave that again in a way that feels good.
I love that. Yes, exactly. I think we always talk about that idea of whatever maleness or machismo. Or also, it's um, it's trying to deconstruct and take apart that which is toxic
Yeah.
and that which may have a different intent.
Hmm.
And definitely never supporting that which is violent or toxic, but looking at the other pieces that may not have necessarily always been, intended to be manifested in that way. We
Yeah.
need to look at those patterns and um, separate them out, filter them out.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very curious now about your journey into fatherhood, right? Especially after, and I'm sure you had other male figures in your life, right? Like all of us have, when people say, like, well, I'm not a mother, I'm like, I'm sure you're a mother to somebody. Like, I'm sure that there's
Mm,
some caretaking being done, right? I'm sure there's some,
yes,
like my tios were also my fathers, right? Like whenever
yes.
it's Father's Day, I text all of my tios and I say Feliz Dia del Padre because they also had a hand in raising me. But I'm really curious about what your journey into fatherhood was. Would you be willing to share with us a little bit more about your fatherhood journey?
Yeah, yeah, it's been, I mean, really, it's been beautiful. I know probably that's what we were saying overused, but really, I love that part of who I am, that identity as a father. It is so primary. It's unbelievable. It's life-changing. It's um and so yeah, so my entry into fatherhood uh, came when Jessica and I became a dualidad when we came together. When we came together, she had a daughter and a son, who now are my daughter, my son. And I remember, thinking like, okay, daughter, got it. Another boy, I had that insecurity, right? Because of not having, I felt, that sense of not having that guidance from my father through those years. Um, and it was my idea, my sense that I had lost that. And it was still part of my grief, that everything about fatherhood went with my dad when my dad went, you know. And so I just felt that had left me too. And it was allowing me to still have that grief about that loss, for so long. But then when I was able to start putting that at rest a little bit, and really what main piece of that was then calling on my dad, being now a father and calling on him personally and calling on those memories of him and who he was to wow, to be responsible for guiding these beautiful souls in their life journey to be someone that as you say, you're going to be a father or mother to somebody. And so even, I thought about that. My dad worked a lot and I had that distance from him and he died when I was younger. And none of that, seems to matter in terms of my memory of him and what a powerful influence he has always been in my life and impactful. And I was like, wow, that's what's going to happen, as I'm a father, whether you like it or not, you're going to impact your kids' lives. They're going to just, you're going to be these bigger, stronger, wiser people, hopefully, in their lives. And so I felt it was a shift and I felt it very grateful and it has been and continues to be the joys of my life to be a father. And then about 10 years ago, then Jessica and I had a little one as well. And so then that's I've been grateful for having some of those baby years, as well. And anytime I'm gentle with my kids, it reminds me of my father
Mm.
because he in some ways he was the youngest of 12 and in some ways a very typical uh, typical traditional, male in a lot of ways, strong and, went to work a lot. Um, but also, like I said, these things didn't make sense till later. I think being the youngest of 12 and being more creative, being more in that way, I think that kind of was a part of him that I remember the most. I mean, he connected to me, to other people really well. Had a really gentle presence. He was really funny, and so when I see myself, feeling that sense of gentleness with my kids come out, it always connects me to my dad, and I think that I don't think people would necessarily see that in him when they would just meet him or see him as a person.
Mm.
Could easily be, someone could easily not notice that or see that. And I think that's one of the things that we need to talk about more, other fathers and other males. We need to talk about the ways in which we are also gentle in our parenting and in our ways of being with our kids. And I don't think we talk about it probably like two reasons. One is maybe if you're around your other fathers and friends, nobody wants to hear about that. That's not a typical thing to talk about,
Yeah.
maybe embarrassed. Or we just don't think about it as a thing to talk about. It's like, why would I bring that up? And especially if we don't want to come from ego, we don't
Yeah.
want to say how gentle we are. It's like, why would we talk about it? I think one of the reasons why we should is because it's not a narrative that's in our community strongly. It's kind of
Mm.
one of those changing the way things are done. It's kind of one of those seeing your fatherhood as a social justice position where we need to actively bring those stories of gentleness out, gentle fatherhood out,
Yeah.
even if we feel we shouldn't or we feel embarrassed or, as I said, maybe we think it's ego. Well, we kind of can't afford not to talk about it. There's a lot going on in
Yeah.
our community. There's a lot of pain, and I think that's one of my invitations. I think to other fathers is if that's part of your experience or part of an experience you've known, we need to build that story up. We need to make that more uh, conscious in our communities. So I don't know how we got there, but
Yeah, it's
that's
beautiful
where we're
that we
at.
did get there. And I feel like, something that I love about you is that you have such a beautiful way of piecing together the way that the personal is political, right? And that the personal is very much tied into the ways that we are resisting colonialism, the ways that we are resisting patriarchy, the ways that we are resisting ongoing colonization, right? And I love that. And I love that you're focusing specifically on the way, because I always say like motherhood is medicina, like motherhood is medicine, right? And so
Yes.
similarly, fatherhood can also be, and in many ways is. And I remember, and I share this, I'm like, I had my tios, like I grew up with my mom's brothers were all de rancho, they were all bien bruscos, they were loving and playful with us. And like, I have very good relationships with all my tios. But when it came to the way that they fathered, it was very, very hard, but my dad, más de ciudad, más educado, like went to college in Mexico, my mom, third grade education, like, my tios didn't go to school. So I think about like how it was such a blessing for me to be able to see the gentleness that my dad held, pero también no tenía la responsabilidad of the stress of raising us, right?
Right.
Like my mom did everything, right? And like, it was like he could just like lay back and relax and be that gentle, playful person. And so there's
Right.
very real stressors that are placed on mothers that sometimes make it harder for us to be that gentle one, and also
Yep.
on fathers that make it hard for them to be that gentle one, right? And so we think about it in the terms of history, but history is very much still in the present. And I know that Carissa probably wants to read off some questions, and I know that this plática could probably go on for like at least a
Forever.
lot, forever and
Yeah.
ever. Yeah,
Thank
but I
you.
appreciate that framework so much, because it's really important that we recognize that whatever we are doing at the personal level is not only at the personal level, like it has a
Right.
ripple effect. It goes outward and inward, right? And forward and backward. And yeah, so I really appreciate that framework. And I'm gonna invite Carissa now to read off some of the questions,
Yes.
because like, oh my gosh, how is it already almost the
Yeah,
hour?
we're quick.
Yeah, and the questions began to come in, just I kept inviting people to ask. So um, Dr. Manuel, you did begin to answer this question, but I just wanted to ask it again. Is what is the wish for brown fathers who are beginning their healing journey? And you began to share, like really talking and being open and vulnerable, but is there anything else you would add to that to answer this question?
Well, I think it ties into what Leslie was just saying, which I think is really important. I feel there is a responsibility in being a brown father that part of our healing is preparing our kids and talking to them and having them and us realize that we are still going to face people that want to jump on and write our story for us about how we should act, especially, our brown children. Um, there's a lot of negative stereotypes still very present, and I think, part of what we need to do is realize that, being a brown father, as I said, it is a social justice position. As Jessica always says, and I do believe that almost any position that we have can be a social justice position. And for us, I think that really is true. So we have what we as individually and personally, how we want to be with our families, and everyone has that, and how they want to raise their families in the best way they can. And I think, of course, that's important. And um, we also want to make sure that we understand that um, people are going to expect a lot of negative shit from us, as brown fathers. And the very base level, I know we could go into it a lot, but a very overgeneralization is, don't buy into that. Don't be baited. We really are pushing against that tide, and we need to really call on our higher selves to connect with a more holistic way of being a parent.
Yeah. Mm. Yes.
Yes, thank you for that.
Mm.
I'm going to kind of blend some of these questions. There is actually a lot of like a lot of the questions are very related, and it goes back to the binary of like fathers being more angry, more firm, this binary of if I'm not more stern, um, you know, one of the questions is, what would you say to a young father who feels like this, like children will not respect him if he's more stern? And one of the other ones is, in when you talk about emotionality and emotions that get valued in patriarchy, i.e. anger is the emotion they brought up, it's seen as more negative or dangerous. So how can I process anger without repressing it? And so it's back to the idea that you can't be angry, it's that binary, when anger is a normal emotion for anyone to feel. And then one of the other ones is remaining firm. What would you there was another one on remaining firm. So how can you share how fathers can reflect more on when and how to repair and remain firm? So this common theme around fatherhood and the angry father, or that feeling.
No, thank you for that, everybody who's asking that, and for kind of consolidating that. And one is, I always first want to say, we definitely, in our patriarchal society, we have issues to deal with. We definitely have, aggression, violence, um, toxic ways of masculinity that are there. So anything I say, know that is there, and I see that. Um, so I also think there's a difference between being firm and being abusive. There's a difference between disciplining and being the strict parent and being toxic. I mean, as Leslie just said too, a lot of the times the unseen strict person in the family is the mom, because they're the ones with the kids all the time, and they really lay down the line, and the dads walk in, they don't know what's happening or what's been negotiated, and they let somebody do something or they say something. It's like, and the mom's been really working hard to put something in place. So so there's discipline, but a lot of the times the problem is that when it comes from fathers and male or male identified people, the discipline has never been untangled from aggression and or violence. And so we need to realize that if we want to set certain things in place in our families, depending on, what you prefer, one of the really simple things is, to understand that, to know that if you have a partner, to talk through it, with them, so that when you lay down the discipline, it doesn't come from you're in a already angry, frustrated place. It comes from a place where these are the boundaries you're putting in. Now, we already get frustrated, and there's already tension. But I think what happens is when people put that sternness down, I think a lot of fathers feel they have to be angry when they do it, or they do it after they've gotten angry. So it's a response, it's a reaction, and it's not really, and they tell themselves, and it becomes part of their parenting. But if they step back from that, you can decide how you want to implement certain discipline. It doesn't have to be aggressive necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm hyped.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what we need. That's what we need to talk about a lot more too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you define being a great father?
Oof. Well, of course, there are many ways to connect with your role as a parent, um, depending on who you are in your family and your kids. But I think if you could sit your kids down 30 years from now and have a conversation with them, and they could describe you in a way that um, has been a part of them being generally happy, well-adjusted adults in society, and they could mention that you were part of that, then I think that's a good place to start.
Beautiful. I just wanted to chime in because I had just opened the chat for the first time, and I see Maestro Jerry is in here also. And I think it goes back to something you had commented on. But it's a good point, why when moms or grandmas are harsh and demeaning, there is an understanding of that. But when fathers do it, it is seen as toxic, right? I heard you speak to this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to just give Maestro Jerry the space.
Yes.
And also wanted to invite you to acknowledge that and address it if it feels good.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, and definitely want to acknowledge and honor all of Maestro Jerry's presence here. Thank you, Maestro, and everything that you continue to do. And so I think I was starting to connect with that. I think it has to do with these templates of masculinity that are already out there for all the reasons we could talk about, and that so when discipline comes from maleness, it's assumed that it needs to be, or it's only done right if it comes from that place of anger or aggression, um, because that's it's really another falsehood, but that's another piece of that, toxic masculine template that we have, where when mothers or grandmothers are harsh, we again attribute it to a negative sense of femininity. They got overly frustrated, so they're lashing out. They're ready. They can't take too much. They're too emotional. Um, so it all goes down to the root of how we see that discrepancy in our stereotypes about the masculine and the feminine. With that, the roots of that are already misinformed, incorrect, toxic, then everything that grows from those roots are going to reflect that. So how discipline is done, how anything is kind of formulated, is gonna emanate from the roots from which it's growing. Yeah, that's what I would think.
I love how the theme really of this conversation was this concept of duality, and how the duality doesn't have to be the binary. I think that was kind of a common theme throughout a lot of the conversation, and there were questions even in the chat just how to spell Ometeo.
Ometeo.
The deity of duality. And I also wanted to share, as I was looking over the parenting quotes, Hector, our first guest on the series, shared that his favorite parenting quote was the band, everyone has a part to play. And it reminded me of your dad playing in a band, in el trio. But I just thought that was, I thought that was a really cute quote, and just what it reminded me of as you shared the story of what your father did and who he was.
Yeah, it took me a while to find, we have those Loteria shirts, and I have El Sol, but I recently, after years, we just went to San Antonio, to the Mercado there, San Antonio, Texas, and I finally found El Músico. I've been looking for, and a good one, I finally found El Músico for my dad, so that when I wear that t-shirt, it's finally it's for my dad. So I love that I have that Loteria t-shirt.
Ahí se te apareció. There he was. There he was. There he is.
There he is.
Beautiful. We have a few more questions. I do want to respect everybody's time and your time, Maestro. I am beyond honored to have been able to hear your story. I had not heard so much of what you had shared, and I'm so grateful that you were willing, to be open and to share as much of yourself as you have. And I wanted to also recognize that there were some unanswered questions. So what I've done is I've copied them and pasted them into an email already. So I'm going to be sending them to you. If you want to answer them on your end, on your page, si gustas, you can absolutely do that. But definitely want people to be able to find you. Would you be willing to share with us some more about what offerings you hold and what's coming up and how people can find you?
Yes. So the best way is rasapsychology.org. That's our webpage.
I dropped the links in the chat.
Perfect.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, thank you. And really quickly, we typically offer kind of 4 strands of offerings. One are community workshop pláticas, where we take themes of what we call Chicanic psychology, but related to what's happening with our community, right? So our next one is going to be liberation and healing, kind of decolonizing our identities, doing a kind of a liberation círculo. And then I do some professional development for clinicians, so that's separate. Third, we do classes on Chicano psychology. And our next one is going to be our 3rd class in Chicanic psychology, which is on the family, psychology of the Chicanic family. And the 4th is just consultations, with organizations that we do. So, so if you go to the webpage, you'll see some more stuff that's coming up. Yeah.
Yes, and subscribe, because you also have, you send all of that information also via email. Yes. I sign up for everything. My Venmo is pinging you all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna get in this. We're completing the level 2 Chicanx affirmative therapy, which has been incredible. Level 1 also incredible. Just all of the offerings and both perspectives, right? You and Jessica, just like, it's so beautiful. And Jessica brings her medicine so sweetly and so beautifully as well, with the drumming and the singing as well, is just so healing to me. And this plática has been very healing as well to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people that have attended. I'm so grateful that we're able to offer it, for forever, right? Forever, because I'm going to definitely need to come back to all of the pláticas and just rehear these really important messages from the Brown Fathers that were a part of the series this year. And Carissa, am I missing anything?
The last thing I just wanted to share was, again, another message of gratitude for you both for being here and sharing from both of your stories. I love kind of hearing from Dr. Manuel, and then hearing, like, Leslie, your perspective and your family stories. And then the last thing I just want to share from Latinx Parenting is that if you're wondering where our courses have been, we have some exciting updates coming soon. We are launching our Escuelita very soon, all of our course offerings. And if you want to be the first to be notified, then you can sign up for our wait list, which I'll also drop in the chat. because there are so many new things coming. Our team has just been growing and we have so many ideas for future Platica series. And there's just so much coming that we want you to be aware of if you are interested.
Yeah, and I see us like continuing to collaborate, right? Like I really want to keep amplifying your message, Dr. Manuel, and also, you know, Mr. Jerry's. Like I would love, I've been telling you this for years. I'm like, I really want to make sure that like we stay connected because and also, you know, I share with Chris, I'm like, we have this like very curated, like these are my people, like these people understand, but also like the more that we are able to kind of join forces, the more that we can start moving into that paradigm and actually shifting what's outside of that bubble. Because it is very, you know, I don't realize it until I have conversations with people who are like very much pro violence against children. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's still a thing. Like, but it is. Right? Because the conversations we're having are like very healing and they're very like, oh, you get it, I get it. Okay, cool. Like the world gets it. But no, we have so much work to do. And I will always say like, you know, we will all pass away before the work is done. And so we will continue to do it. And so I'm so grateful for your work, for your medicina, for your presence in my life, personally, professionally, all of that. So thank you all to everybody that joined. Thank you, Hector, Orlando, everybody that's participating in the chat, La Socamati, Ometeo. I appreciate all of you, all of your paths, all of your journeys that have led you here today, and celebrate the journey that will continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Ometeo.
Thank you, Ometeo.